boys and girls, we are going to read a book called Extra Yarn. And it's a Caldecott Honor book, which means it won an honor for the illustrations, for the pictures. So I really like Caldecott books. When it's a gold one, they're the main winner. But when it's silver, or it looks gray on the book, then they got honored for it. So it was one of the ones that they had to choose from to win. So John Clausen is the illustrator of this book, and Mac Barnett is the author. I think you'll like it. It's a sweet story. Extra Yarn. And my little Ricky, who I had in kindergarten, goodness, he's a 3rd grader now, gave me this book when he was in kindergarten. Here's the title page. On a cold afternoon, in a cold little town, where everywhere you looked was either the white of snow or the black of soot from chimneys, Annabelle found a box filled with yarn of every color. So soot's kind of what's left over from ashes when you have a fire. So everything in the winter in this picture looks very cold and drab, doesn't it? So she went home and knit herself a sweater. And when Annabelle was done, she had some extra yarn. So she knit a sweater for Mars, too. Who do you think Mars is? Right. But there was still extra. And when Annabelle and Mars went for a walk, Nate pointed and laughed and said, "You two look ridiculous." "You're just jealous," said Annabelle. "No, I'm not," said Nate. I don't think Nate is being very nice. But it turned out he was. So he was a little jealous, and Annabelle made him a sweater too. And it made the dog happy too. And even after she'd made a sweater for Nate and his dog, and for herself and for Mars, she still had extra yarn. At school, Annabelle's classmates could not stop talking about her sweater. "Quiet!" shouted Mr. Norman. "Quiet, everyone. Annabelle, that sweater of yours is a terrible distraction. I cannot teach with everyone turning around to look at you." "Then I'll knit one for everyone," Annabelle said, "so they won't have to turn around." "Impossible," said Mr. Norman. "You can't." Not very nice either. But it turned out she could. And she did. Even for Mr. Norman. And when she was done, Annabelle still had extra yarn. So she knit sweaters for her mom and dad, and for Mr. Pendleton, and Mrs. Pendleton, and for Dr. Palmer, and for little Louis. I don't know why it's blurry. I'm sorry about that. She made sweaters for everyone, except Mr. Crabtree, who never wore sweaters or even long pants, and would stand in his shorts with the snow up to his knees. "No sweater for me, thanks," said Mr. Crabtree. He must be very, very hot-natured. So she made Mr. Crabtree a hat, and even then, Annabelle still had extra yarn. She made sweaters for all the dogs and all the cats, and for other animals too. Soon, people thought, soon Annabelle will run out of yarn. But it turned out she didn't. So Annabelle made sweaters for things that didn't even wear sweaters. What are some things here that have sweaters that don't even wear sweaters normally? Usually birds and bears and bunny rabbits don't wear sweaters, but what's that, do you think? A mailbox, a birdhouse, and a house. They don't usually wear sweaters, right? Look. Very pretty and colorful. Things began to change in that little town. You can still see what the buildings are, even if they have sweaters on, can't you? News spread of this remarkable girl who never ran out of yarn, and people came to visit from around the world to see all the sweaters and to shake Annabelle's hand. One day, an archduke, who was very fond of clothes, sailed across the sea and demanded to see Annabelle. "Little girl," said the archduke, "I would like to buy that miraculous box of yarn, and I am willing to offer you $1,000,000. That's a whole lot of money. "No, thank you," said Annabelle, who was knitting a sweater for a pickup truck. The archduke's mustache twitched, so he's mad. $2,000,000, he said. Annabelle shook her head. "No, thanks." $10,000,000, shouted the archduke. "Take it or leave it." "Leave it," said Annabelle. "I won't sell the yarn." And she didn't. I think she really enjoys making things for people, don't you? So that night, the archduke hired 3 robbers to break into Annabelle's house, and they stole the box and took it to the archduke, who set off across the snow and sailed over the sea. Not a good person, huh? And went back to his castle. The archduke put on his favorite song and sat in his best chair. Then he took out the box and he lifted its lid and he looked inside. What do you think is going to happen? The box is empty. And this is how you knit. These are called darning needles. His mustache quivered. It shivered. It trembled. The archduke hurled the box out the window and shouted, "Little girl, I curse you with my family's curse. You will never be happy again." That is just not nice. She didn't want to sell it, and she told him no. And he stole it, and then he did that? It's very hurtful. And said she'd never be happy again? It's dreadful. But it landed on some ice, didn't it? An ice floe is what that's called. And there it is out in the middle of the ocean. And it made its way back to Annabelle. And it turned out she was very happy. Look at the tree. And all the animals. I hope you liked that story. The back of the book says, "This looks like an ordinary box full of ordinary yarn." But it turns out it isn't. Oh. I got bored and doodled the other day. Do you see my little thumbnail? All right, kiddos. I hope you enjoyed our story.